Thank you for being with us, and we will call the Kerrville City Council meeting to order. And actually, before I forget that, we need to recess out of executive session. We do not have anything to report, and so we will close the workshop at 6:02, and at 6:02, we will open the city council meeting. I think we can say happy birthday to Councilman Herring,
Oh,
so
let's sing.
shall we sing?
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Joe. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, our invocation and pledge of allegiance will be led by Councilmember Garcia.
Please stand. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for giving us another day to live in your wonderful creation with family and friends whom we love. You continue to bless us beyond what we deserve, and we humbly thank you, and we ask for a lot more rain to pour over us soon. I pray for continued blessings over our community, our state, and our nation. May your favor and protection be on all of us, including those who are struggling throughout our world. May they see your gracious love to comfort them and your strength to help them overcome any adversity. We welcome your presence into this room tonight. I ask for your guidance as we seek to govern our city in a way that is beneficial for all its people. And I pray that our actions are in step with your will. May your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. In your Son's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Tunis.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to be brief. We don't have a lot, and I can't wait to get Jam Broadcasting up here. So I'll just tell you a couple of things that we've got going on, and both of them are parks activities. One of them is this Saturday, August 26th. Starting at 4 p.m., we have the Kerrville River Roadster Show. Great event that we have every year. There's going to be a lot of great cars out there, a lot of great food, and the flashbacks start at 4. The only difference between this year and last year is that we are moving it. I think we've had 3 years at Louise Hayes Park, but this year it's going to be over at the sports complex. So keep that in mind when you look for it Saturday afternoon. Come on out and see us. A lot of fun. And since we won't meet again till after September 9th, the last concerts by the river, keep that, go ahead and mark that on your calendar. It will be September 9th, Louise Hayes Park at 7 o'clock. I am not sure yet who we have planned for that, but as soon as I know, we'll be issuing a press release and encourage everybody to come out. Maybe it'll be a little cooler by then too. So come on out and see us. And that's it from me. I will turn it over to y'all.
Stuart, real quick, your River Roadster event, does that have a start time?
4 o'clock.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you, sir. Council, anybody have something they'd like to mention?
I just want to let everybody know that we have applications that are currently being accepted for several things. I'll name them real quick. The Building Board of Adjustment and Appeals, our Main Street Advisory Board, Senior Services Advisory Board, our TERS Board, and our Zoning Board of Adjustment. And for students of Kerr County who are in high school for this upcoming semester or upcoming school year 23 to 24, you're invited and the current city is currently accepting applications for our Kerrville Area Youth Leadership Academy, or known as KALA. So definitely invite all those who are interested to apply to those things.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. We have a presentation to make, and I think we have some people in the house from Jam Radio. Will you join me up front, please? Have you guys come on over, come on down.
Yeah.
They're awful quiet. If you're out there in the morning,
Usually we're loud.
if you're ever out there in the
We can
morning,
fix that if
it's
you want.
loud, it's rambunctious, it's music all the time. It's great, really is. So, all right, we're proud to do this. The city of Kerrville recognizes Jam Broadcasting with the August 22nd, 2023 Kerrville Kindness Award. Noticing the peeling paint and rust on the flag and light poles at the Kerr County Courthouse, Jam Broadcasting owners and employees took it upon themselves to remedy the situation. They gained the approval of the Kerr County Commissioners Court, a process that required liability waivers, insurance guarantees, and coordination with the Kerr County maintenance staff, purchased all the supplies, and obtained free of charge high-reach equipment from 5 Star Rental. Jam staff then spent 2 days, April 15 and 16, removing the old paint and applying multiple coats of new paint to all the poles. The Kerrville Kindness Program offers a sincere thank you to Jam Broadcasting for their willingness to step up and complete a project that is truly beneficial to all concerned. But we appreciate this.
All right, thank you,
Very
Mayor.
much.
All right.
We'll let them take some pictures, and then I want you guys to have a chance to introduce yourselves. All right, so please, introduce yourselves, and then I want you to tell us a little bit about.
All right, I'm Justin McClure, one of the owners of Jam Broadcasting.
I'm Leslie McClure, his wife, also with Jam Broadcasting.
Coach Keller, do sports, Tommy football, basketball, baseball. Been doing it for a while.
A voice you heard before.
J.R. Alexander, Hill Country Nation Game of the Week on Jam Broadcasting.
I'm John McClellan. I am a board up. I also do the Dallas Cowboy games on Sundays. I've really enjoyed my work here.
Kim Pendergraph with Ryan and Kim on Mike FM, 103.7, 107.7, and 12:30 a.m. Make sure you listen weekday mornings starting at 7 a.m. We're on from 7 to 10 a.m. You can listen to us from anywhere on jambroadcasting.com, or if you upload our Jam Broadcasting app.
Ryan Pendergraft on the other half of the morning show.
Thank you all.
Man, we love this community, and this is one thing that we noticed about 6 years ago when we first got here, that flagpole and those poles around the county courthouse, it looked in pretty bad shape. And we thank God every day that we wake up in this beautiful community. I love to show people around, and I was about to bark a little bit at the county guys, but then as I headed back to my truck, I saw a sticker that was on the back of my truck that the mayor gave me, and it says wag more and bark less. And so instead of going to, we have a pretty big megaphone in town, but instead of getting after people, once we kind of did a little bit of research, the county maintenance crew here has a lot more jobs that they have to deal with that were of higher importance than the flagpoles and the light poles around the courthouse. So we decided to take it among ourselves. I suckered my staff into helping us. It was a lot more intensive of a job than we first expected, but now every time we drop by, it catches my eyes. And so take a look if you haven't noticed them around the courthouse. But now, I think with that, there's nothing that I can find that I wouldn't present to anybody coming to this community, you know. And that was one thing that we could take on ourselves, and I invite everybody else to wag a little bit more and bark a little bit less and take some of these projects on. It's what our community is about, and we all need to get back to a sense of community, regardless of what our beliefs are politically, regardless of what our beliefs are religiously. It used to be that we could be with our neighbors and talk to our neighbors, irregardless of if they had different beliefs than us. And I feel that we need to get back to that. And so we do this. I appreciate the things. The things that we do for this community behind the scenes are not for these awards. We do it because we love the place that we live. And so Take a look at the courthouse and see what you think. And I bought way too much paint, so they should have a lot to keep it up for several years to come. So thank you, Mayor. Appreciate you. Thank you, the vice president. I know who was talking good about you now. Thank you. All right. Justin. Thank you, man.
Got it, buddy.
All right. Thank you. No, thank you, God, Roland. All right. All right. We'll let these seats be empty. Thank you, guys.
We'll see you all on Thursday morning.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good one.
All right. Fun thing, they do a lot of good things in our community. All right, council, we are ready for a consent agenda. Do we? Oh, visitors forum. I'm always forgetting that. I'm sorry. You are right. We have 2 people signed up. All right. Since we only have 2, we'll give them 2 minutes. 2?
Okay.
2 minutes.
Daughtery.
Yes, my name is Ian Doherty. First off, I want to say, hi, Roman. Nice suit, like it.
Thank you.
Also, part of the reason I was up here today was to be able to speak about general things around this community. First off, I love Kerrville. I've been here since November 1st, 2020. I'm sorry, November 1st, 2001. Sorry, right after 9/11. And I really do love this town. It's a wonderful town. Unfortunately, sometimes I have seen a lot of things happening in this town that are not exactly people-friendly. Some things I'm talking about is, for instance, what is being done by you all to be able to help out the homeless population, which is growing in this town, in this community, especially during this type of a heat wave. What exactly is being done? Is anything being done? I know that, for instance, you can go to the Salvation Army, which is a fantastic thing to do, but you can only go there for 3 days. What is going on? These people are baking. These people are melting out there, just like everyone else does. However, everyone else has a place to be able to go that's nice and air conditioned. They don't. What's going on with that? These are just some of the things I'm talking about. For instance, the city has so much money to spend on all these stupid things. I just got a quote, for instance, from a place that was selling those signs that have the little lights around it that are all over the town, which are ridiculous. Just one sign is $1,999 with a $400 reduction if you get 100 of them. The total amount comes to $161,000. Now, how is that financially and fiscally responsible? It's not. With things going on in this town, things that are needed, like, as I said, a place for these people to go, where they're not going to bake and die. The amount of congestion in this town, and then you're looking forward to everybody coming in, and thank you, and then people coming in for the eclipse. You got to talk about the congestion that's happening in this town. What's being done about any of this? Also,
Sir,
what's going on?
I need to limit you to 2 minutes, please,
Why is that?
because that's what I said for tonight.
Oh,
We have a
okay.
long agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thank you.
George Baruti.
George Kerrville. So I'll just do that in half as well. Really? All right. So I just had a couple of budget questions. Basically, before you come back with the budget, I assume it's the next meeting that you'll be approving it. I'd like you to do a little research and give us the answers. Basically, two, one having to do with streets and one having to do with water. How much would it cost to restore the streets to the level they were 1 year ago? So essentially, how much is the actual maintenance cost that's being incurred during 1 year? A little hint, you go check your Fugo report from 2019, which apparently is still active, and it'll tell you. And then the second part of that question is, how much are we actually budgeting to invest in the streets? And debt doesn't count. The amount you pay back on the debt service counts. But, and see, and compare those two numbers for us, please, next meeting, if you could. The other is having to do with water. Ask the question, how much revenue is generated by the reuse water system, the sales from reuse water? And how much is it actually costing us to deliver that reuse water, and who's paying for that? Another hint, the reason the rates are going up this year isn't because our expenses are going up, it's because the KPUB loan that was utilized to pay for the reuse pond kicked into principal this year, this fiscal year we're in now, and it went from being $200,000, we were doing interest only, to a little over $1 million. And so you might consider how we calculate our rates. It's supposed to be a user fee system, not a tax, and we're handling it like it's a tax. But if you could answer those questions the next time, I'd appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, we now are ready for the consent agenda. Is there anything that needs to be pulled by any council member?
Mayor, I'm going to request to pull 4A. And I don't have a request to pull, but I submitted requests for corrections to the minutes, and the city secretary, thank you for that, and she has provided a copy of those printed out at everybody's desk. So unless anybody has any other suggestions or anything wrong with those recommendations, then I would move to adopt the rest of the consent agenda, including the amendments that were made to the minutes.
Second.
Second, thank you, Brenda. All in favor, raise your hand, right hand, and thank you very much. It is approved. Roman, on 4A, what do you have?
Okay. So this is a resolution amending the membership qualifications for the Main Street Advisory Board. And I'm trying to help me understand the board's decision or their view on why they're recommending this change, since their meetings aren't recorded for me to see afterwards. I'm understanding that they are asking to broaden the qualification for a member, and that a member can have a vested interest in the Main Street area and or in the city's Main Street program, such that they were previously business or property owners in the Main Street area. So I'm trying to understand that, because in the summary statement, I'm trying to understand the rationale, basically, not what it does, but I get what it does, but the rationale, because it's my understanding here that says the board's hope is to allow a person to be considered who may not have property in the designated area, but holds a strong interest in the Main Street. Business owners typically are unable or unavailable to dedicate a large amount of outside volunteer hours, so the board is hoping to broaden the reach for membership. I thought that's what we did when we broadened the qualification to, it doesn't have to be a business owner, but the business owner can, in a sense, nominate somebody within their business to be a member. Did that not actually accomplish what we were looking for?
It didn't. So the purpose of providing this recommendation to you all was just to try and get some more people interested in applying for the board. So that change that you mentioned, it did allow for people that owned a business or a building to recommend somebody to apply on that behalf. And then this time, we're trying to just open it to anybody who has an interest in downtown. We've had 4 openings for this board for a little over a month now, and we, up until today, only had 1 application. So as of today, we have 2 that would qualify before this change even made effect. So we're hoping that we can broaden it to people who do have an interest in Main Street and the Main Street program and have the time to dedicate towards our work plan and doing things like that.
Okay. I'm just a little cautious. If this is gonna serve, in the board's opinion, the Main Street Advisory Board's opinion, a good interest, then I think I'm willing to go in favor of this. I just am concerned of how far we continue to broaden the qualification. Right now, it's anyone with an interest. I mean, we wouldn't generally or ever allow just anyone with an interest in the city of Kerrville to run for council. You have to live within the city limits, and the same would otherwise apply here, where you have to have a business in the zone. So I'm just concerned that we're getting now people who are not directly affected by the decisions that Main Street Advisory Board makes onto the board to make those decisions, if that makes sense.
No, completely understand. And currently, the problem that we would be facing is a lack of quorum, even moving forward.
Okay.
So I think, if that's something you would like to look at, maybe we look at something else in addition. Look at.
And do we know if, and I'm hoping it's not this, I really am, and I don't mean this with any disrespect, but is there a reason why there's not an interest in the Main Street Advisory Board? Do we need to, add something to its duties and say, hey, we want you to do this too, so people are interested in it? Do we know why there's no interest?
So the main thing, which is why they did this, is they have friends that are interested and have volunteer time,
Okay.
but they just don't qualify. But aside from that, I'm not sure.
Okay. It's sad to me to see that we have such a big zone within our downtown area and a program, yet we just don't have the people who are interested to join the board, and so now we're having to get people who are outside of there. And I just would hate to say one day anybody in Kerr County, hopefully it would happen, but anybody in Kerr County can then, get on the board. So I'm hesitant in that way.
understand.
So,
They're just looking at, right now, just a little bit broadening, and I think it's a good idea. I think it's going to bring in some interested people that would not have qualified before, so I think it's good.
And the intent is for you all to look at the application and decide if that would be applicable, or maybe it's something that's not related at all in their experience or their interest.
okay. All right. Well, I appreciate the information, and I appreciate what the board's done to bring forward a recommendation for us. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay, Roman, do you want to make that motion?
I have no motion to make. I just had questions. Thank you.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 27-2023.
Second.
We have a second. All in favor, raise your right hand, and it is unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Okay, 5A and 5B, we are going to postpone those two. Number 6,
Can I ask a question on that?
on what?
I was just curious because we're postponing it because it's by the request of the applicant. Are we going to be required to send out notices and everything again?
We are.
That'll be a cost on the city?
That's a cost on the developer.
They'll pay that cost. Okay.
There's a penalty in Drew's side of the house for missed publications, or if we have to go forward and do that. Yes, sir.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, Shelley, will you read in 6A or 5A? No, I'm sorry, 6A. 6A.
Ordinance number 2023-12, second reading. An ordinance amending chapter 60 of the Code of Ordinances, City of Kerrville, Texas, such chapter more commonly known as the City Zoning Code, amending said code to revise regulations regarding the permitted location of accessory buildings and structures within the front setback as applicable to fences, providing other matters relating to the subject. There are no citizen speakers signed up.
All right, thank you. Council, do we have any questions? We have had this before us. Okay, do we have a motion?
I move we adopt ordinance number 2023-12 on second reading.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, raise your right hand. And there are 4 for, opposed. Roman is against. And it passes. All right, thank you very much, and I hope we don't see that one again for a while. We've taken care of it, let's hope. All right, number 7A.
Consideration of charge to and schedule for the Charter Review Commission.
Good evening, council. This is kind of one of the highlights of my job, and I get to do it once every 5 years, but get you all to adopt this charge and schedule for the Charter Review Commission. I think you all would agree that one of the guiding principles in the creation and continuing foundation of this great country is democracy, and local government is a big part of that, a key component of it. City, as you know, is an example of self-government pursuant to its status as a home rule municipality in this great state. In 1912, Texas voters adopted the Home Rule Amendment to the Constitution, and this constitutional amendment basically said, which is still in the books today, if you're greater than 5,000 and you hold a vote, you put forward a charter, then you become a charter city, as we're known. The city charter is akin to our Constitution. And so when someone comes to my office and says, hey, can we do this? That's one of the documents I look at to make sure we can do that, or it specifically says we can't. And it's really this citizens document that sets out what this community thinks that the city should and shouldn't do. Our charter was adopted in 1942, and it's been amended 8 times, the most recent of which was in 2019. And so then tonight is the first step toward setting up a commission to review the current charter, which is required by Section 1206 of the charter. And so this charge before you, in brief, sets up that kind of the parameters of that commission. Most of that is out of 1206 in the charter. One of the things I'll do is, of course, see if there's any federal law or state law that's changed that makes it or requires us to change the charter or tweak the charter in some way. As for a schedule, what I anticipate is you all appoint the Charter Review Commission in your first meeting in September, and then we kind of marshal those forces and start, and throughout the fall meet as frequently and as often kind of as they want to meet. One of the provisions in here is they have to hold a public hearing, and usually they do that toward the end of their review. And if it serves in terms of what we've done in the past, or what I've recommended they do, is they actually create a report, and they issue that report to council as to proposed amendments, and you all can accept all the amendments, accept a few of the amendments, or accept none of the amendments. I don't anticipate there being any huge issues, but it is a neat exercise for Citizens Review Committee such as this commission to go through and really kind of start chewing on this charter document. So I recommend that you adopt this tonight, and then between now and the next meeting be thinking about who you would appoint to that commission. Can I answer any questions?
It's a 5-member commission?
7.
7.
We going to have applications by the city secretary's office, or however the city does that, and those will come to council, or how's that going to work?
We haven't decided, and so that's up to you all. If you want us to go through that process, then we could do that.
Is that what we did in 2018, 2019?
You know, I can't remember.
Look, I just feel like I remember seeing an application online for that, and whenever this item came up on our agenda, I looked it up, and I think it may still be there.
In 2013, they were appointed by the city council during the meeting.
But did they fill out the application form?
With no application?
No, with no application. 2019, they did fill out an application.
I'm
And it was
one of-
within the next meeting.
Okay, well, I guess that's up for council to decide, essentially.
Right.
Second question I had is, they have a 6-month term.
Yes.
But assuming we make the appointments in September, we're telling them that they need to give us, council, a recommendation in 3 months, on or before December 31st, so that can be submitted for the May ballot. Is there, I just don't know why we're doing it, essentially cutting their term a little bit short, in half, essentially.
Well, what I anticipate is certainly going over this charge and schedule with them when they first meet, and saying that if you all need more time, I mean, I don't anticipate, getting into December and saying, y'all are done. We would, if we've done in the past, we give council periodic updates as to, their progress and what they're doing. And again, I think our charter, we did a full-scale review and essentially a rewrite in 2004, and I think it's a really good document as it is. Not that it doesn't need to be tweaked and looked at and perhaps even amended, but I don't anticipate any huge issues. And what's happened in the past is they meet like every other week, starting off, and then it, of course, slows down, and they might even appoint a committee to look at specific sections or something like that. I don't anticipate any issues, and certainly if they want more time, then we'll give them the full 6 months, and they could even ask for additional period of time from council.
Then that would push the possible election from May to November of next year?
I haven't looked into that issue. It may be in November, but it may, I don't know how that would work. But
We'll get to it when we get there.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right, council, are you good with applications?
I just want to clarify on page 3 of this that it states that meeting will be held on September 12th, 2024 to appoint 7 persons to the commission. I just want to correct that.
My mistake, yeah, we'll correct that.
So that if there's any question.
Mayor, I actually served on a charter review commission, and it was pleasant, if not detailed and exacting work. So it's a good thing to do to review.
Yes, it is. So do we have consensus then? I don't think we need a motion for applications, but are you all good if they post the application online and we invite people to fill it out?
Yeah, provided we get at least 7 applicants.
I think we will. I think we will,
So
hopefully.
then the gist will be, we'll get whatever applicants we get, and then council, the majority of council will select the 7 that are gonna go
We
on.
would all select.
So we all get to appoint one person, and then,
Or you would nominate and then you would.
well, right, but I know we're having discussion on
So
figuring that
I
out.
would say if we have someone that we want to be interested, have them fill out an application.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I'm trying to figure out how they are actually gonna get on. Are we gonna fill out an application and then?
We will vote them on.
Okay, we'll do it by majority. Okay.
Okay?
You need,
Don't we usually do each council member gets an appointee, and then whatever the remainder is done by
We have done
majority?
it both ways.
Right.
Yes.
Council, what does council think of that?
Pardon?
do we need
What
to
does
take
council
action?
think of that?
Oh,
I'm sorry.
Do we need to take action tonight? or-
You do, you need to, yeah.
Council, Mr. Garcia is asking, do you want to do an appointment? Is that what you're asking, or what?
Well,
Tell me again what
like
you're
what we do with any time we have a special, I'm just wanting to have a dialogue and have a discussion to see, and I'm brainstorming ideas, but when we usually have a special committee or board come up that we appoint, usually every council member gets 1 or 2, and then if there's more than that, then I guess we can do, the remainder can be voted in by majority.
Well, and from my perspective, we can't even find people to fill boards. I kind of have run out of people to ask to do these kinds of things. So I think we ought to just let anybody apply that wants to apply. That would be my suggestion.
Joe, thoughts?
And then
If we have,
we would vote from that pool?
and if we don't have enough, then we'll handle that when we're
Yeah,
here.
yeah. Hopefully we do.
Okay,
All right.
I think we will. Okay, we need a motion.
I'll move to approve the charge 2 in the schedule for the Charter Review Commission.
Second.
Second. All in favor, raise your right hand, and it is unanimous. All righty, thank you much.
Just to clarify, we are taking applications.
Yes, yes. All right, 7B. Shelley?
Submit a Funding application to the City of Kerrville Economic Improvement Corporation for various quality of life projects through the use of sales tax bonds in an amount not to exceed $25 million to include renovation to the Scott Shriner Golf Course, Olympic Pool, Calais Theater, and the Heart of the Hills Heritage Center, as well as other parks and recreation capital projects as funding allows. And we do have 4 citizen speakers signed up.
All right. So would you like to give us some information before we listen to our speakers?
If y'all would like, I think, maybe we'll be able to answer some of those questions before they get up to speak. Hopefully so. Thank you for taking the time tonight. I heard that number out loud and I'm like, God, that's really hard to hear. That's a really big number. So I am well aware that there's a very large number looming on this sheet here. And so I want to spend a little time talking about the projects that we have requested from a staff standpoint, the projects that have come from the community standpoint, and then finally go over, just here's some options for you all to consider asking EIC to help fund. Okay? So I think most everybody here has seen this already. I think one of the major initiatives in this is reinvesting in our current assets. And one of the concerns that is held by staff is a inability for us to staff more than we already have. We don't have budgets enough to take on new projects and to manage new projects and maintain new projects on our side right now. And so the Parks and Rec Board focused a lot on existing projects, existing facilities that are in need of repairs, either critical repairs or it's just rehabilitation time because it's been a long time since they've been updated. And so that is the charge of the Parks and Rec Board and their purview. But that's not the only project that we have, and that's not the only thing to consider in this. And so one of the other things that we'll discuss later on, but I want to mention early, is the Heart of the Hills Heritage Center. And I apologize for the name miscue on the sheet there. No ill intent involved there. We just got so used to calling it HHHC, I think sometimes we forget. So, Heart of the Hills Heritage Center. There was a pause in that project. As we know, there's a funding gap in that project of about $2 million. And one of the things that we wanted to pause on was to get the sentiment from the board of the Heart of the Hills Heritage Center. And they met yesterday, and some of their board members are here today, along with their executive director. And they made they made a motion to move forward and continue on with the project and continue on with the request from the city and EIC to help with that funding gap to fill that. So let's get started. Phil Ashley's. So the first 3 projects on this, and the most critical projects that we have on the city side of current facilities that Parks and Rec is overseeing, is Calais Theater, the Olympic Pool, and the Scott Shriner Golf Course. Calais Theater needs a new roof and needs new AC units and has some interior work that has been damaged because of the roof issues that it has. And so the initial, the consultant that we've engaged is here as well tonight, and he did a fantastic job at bringing us options to consider. Now back in 2022, in August, we received those options, and in a phased approach, it was about $2.9 million for the cost of all of that together. There may be some economies of scale if we can manage that entire project to be placed into one 4-month stretch, but it may be hard to accomplish that and also operate the theater at the same time. So as we move along in the process with this conversation, I think we can tackle that, and there is a way for us to do one phase at a time if we need to. However, it's been a year, and so our cost estimates, we wanted to make sure that we had enough in there to cover the costs on it, and we put that at $4 million. Any questions so far? Okay.
But I thought too, if we went down this road, that we would try to maybe do it all together and not phase it in.
Well, so we would certainly benefit from not having to mobilize 3 times. We would benefit from just getting it all done at once. It certainly would help out. The cost increases each time, each phase that you separate out, not only increases that mobilization portion, but the cost of buying material just continues to go. So we've spoken to Mr. Brown over there tentatively, because we're not this far along in the process yet, about ways that we can work that schedule in. And so hopefully we can get all that done at once, but.
Yeah, if you did it all at once and it took 4 to 5 months to complete, would they then have to be closed the 4 to 5 months? And is that maybe a reason why it's phased so that you could do a portion while still utilizing the theater?
So I think the rationale behind phasing it initially was because we didn't have a funding source.
Okay.
We didn't have a funding source at all. And so we wanted to phase that into manageable bites. And it certainly will be shorter construction timeframes if we do it in phases for portions of it. So we have to have more conversations with them. We have to understand that more from the contractors. I think we can put some limits on timeframes for when they can work, but there's also a limit to that, right?
Yeah.
It becomes, what is more cost fee? What is a better approach for the city from a financial standpoint? So we'll try and weigh that out as much as we can and bring you back more. Next, we have the pool. So they went through a master planning effort, and they're obviously has short-term needs. Those short-term needs are getting more and more exacerbated each year, and so they went through kind of a full master plan for the aquatics, and I won't go through all the iterations there. But that's the list of a lot of the things that they found in that feasibility study, and we want to address in renovations and upgrades to that. There is a other option, but I'm not even going to present that one because the price tag is $28 million, which would be fantastic. But this is the current iteration, which would give us the ability to have a year-round facility. This would update all of our facilities to now be ADA compliant, and would upgrade a lot of the features here. One of the things I did want to highlight in this is the assumptions that they had on the bottom of that were for 3% interest escalations when they made this, and 3% escalations are, well, Julie would be very happy if we had 3% escalations and things. So we still are running numbers with those folks at Marmon Mock, but we're making assumptions that that figure would be closer to 7 than it is to 6. For the purposes of this discussion, so.
Do we know for sure, on the pool, do we know that if we put in competition lanes and we put in spectator seating, do we know that it will be used for that? I mean, what kind of guarantees do we have from our local schools?
So.
Or requests,
We
or?
met with our local schools. I'll let Ashley speak to that.
So we've been working, as I mentioned at our joint workshop last week. Good evening, Mayor and Council. We've been working with our stakeholders for several years now regarding this project, since 2018, since it launched. And the school district and both the university still stand in favor of support of this project. They still are interested in bringing on competitive swim teams programs to both their schools, in addition to the local swim team C3 Swim Club that would swim year-round at our facility if it were to be available.
Where do they swim now?
They swim at our pool at the summer, and they swim at the Center for Fitness.
Okay. Now, you said support. Is there support only that will use it? Is there support, is there any financial support in all of that?
During our discussions, they told us they do not have any capital costs to contribute towards the project. We would look at some sort of user agreement to where they would help offset with some revenue fees, but they do not have capital dollars to commit towards the project.
They know that that's probably what the consideration is? And
Yes.
what they would be?
Yes.
Okay.
Would it be open to the public year-round then?
Yes,
It would be.
yes, for programming.
Okay, I think that's all I had right now, so. Council, any other questions on it?
Can you clarify what you said? It'll be open to the public year-round for
Programming, yeah.
programming?
For
What does that
programming
mean?
such as adult lap swim, so we'll offer it for open swim for lap swimming hours. We would look at recreational use as well, what's feasible, what we can staff. Look at additional programming, offering swim lessons and other programs that are not just offered in the summer, but look at doing a different season for that and that purpose.
Just that program being just you can come and swim, right?
Open swim, we would look at doing that.
Like we do right now with.
We would, mainly in the off-season for outdoor pools, typically folks, it depends on the season, so spring, maybe we'd have some interest. Obviously, summer is our big hit, but in the fall and winter, typically people don't like to recreational swim outdoors, even though a pool is heated, but we can certainly gauge the interest.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ashley.
Any more questions right now on the pool? Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
just, if we're gonna have another space, or if we're gonna, not another space, if we're gonna do this, and we're gonna do the year-round, are those, whoever's gonna be joined, going to be providing people to supervise, lifeguards to oversee the program, or is that something that the city's gonna take on? Because right now, correct me if I'm wrong, but do we have the adequate staffing for that? I
So-
don't know if we do.
If you imagine the summertime and the lifeguards, you go to that pool, those are usually teenagers, right? And those teenagers are in school before the summer and they're out of school after the summer. One of the issues that you find in getting people to apply is that those are kind of the people who are going to apply during the summer. Your Joe average folks who need a part-time job aren't going to apply because it doesn't have any kind of consistency beyond the summertime, right? So when we start talking about year-round, I think I want to make sure we're all understanding this would be like a phased approach. We don't have staffing, right? We'd have to build that in. We have user fees we have to discuss. We have to figure out ways it's not a budgeted item. And so adding those user fees in to cover those, help defray those costs and maintain the consistency that we'd be able to get to. So we could eventually get to a year-round. I would think that the first couple of years, this wouldn't be like a full year-round scenario. This would be a larger time frame than we currently have, but maybe not 12 months.
I'm just, thinking, because if we end up going with this option, we always got to make sure how are we going to maintain it, how are we going to staff it, all those kinds of things. My last question on this is, right now, we are currently behind on maintenance. Is this going to add maintenance that we're going to need a budget in every single year for anything new that's in the building, or anything new we're adding to it? Is that going to be an added cost of maintenance to the city?
So with this project, it would increase the operation and maintenance budget accordingly because we're extending from a 3-month season to potentially 6 to
Right.
12. So costs would increase, and we are evaluating those costs to see what they look like.
Okay, that'd be good to know whenever you have some information on that. Thank
Actually,
you.
one last question. How long should these renovations then last? Do you have any idea?
It's hard to speak directly towards that. I would say these are more definitely long-term improvements. The current pool that we have, we're at 50+ years with the current improvements that are there. So looking at decking's going to last us a long time. The building codes and new buildings, those are going to last us quite a long time. So this is more of a long-term project, not short-term.
Over 20 years.
Pardon?
You're at 50 years now in the current.
Oh.
So over 20.
Over 20, okay.
Not 50 again, but yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Moving on, we get to Scott Schreiner Golf Course. So all of these items, everything you're going to see here tonight is going to have a component of Kerrville 2050 within it. This is the current condition the golf course. And so these greens are 20-plus years old. The bunkers don't drain. And I took out a few of the photos for timing's sake. Renovations need to be done in the bathrooms. Got a dirt floor in parts of the areas that need some concrete. We need some shade structures. A few different items need to be addressed. More specifically, this list right here that Ashley put together. So we want to engage a consultant to give us, verify this information, same as we've done with the park system, same as we did with the aquatic center, and give us their professional opinion on that. We've yet to do that because we can't be reimbursed for it unless we have a resolution. And we're going to be taking that to EIC next Monday, I believe. But we approximated the value of that at around $4 million. So we'll get some verification from those folks, but those are the estimates that we have based on all the renovations that we want to get done over there. Okay. So those are the three main projects. Those are the largest capital requests, and the rationale for bringing a sales tax bond request to you, because those are bigger than one-off projects and larger than EIC can handle in a single bite, right? But there are other projects that are park projects that could also be considered. Expansions of the river trail, miscellaneous park improvements. We have playgrounds aplenty that need to get replaced, and those things last for 20 years. Singing Wind Park has its own master plan. KSP has a lot of projects. Ashley has a grand vision of tunneling underground the highway so we can have a clear path for the folks who are staying at Kerrville Shriner Park, and they don't have to cross the street because it's a safety issue. So there's two ways to go about it. We can go above or we can go below. And the costs of both of those things and TxDOT's agreements on that are beyond what we understand at this point. So we have a long list of projects for sure. Louise Hayes Park, we have some small projects to request out there, and Guadalupe Park, really no improvements other than some new playground upgraded equipment if we can fit it in. So phase 2 of the River Trail, that is phase 2 of the downtown River Trail. That would get us to G Street. We estimated that number to be at about $3 million to go from the pavilion down to G Street. Existing park improvements. Y'all asked staff to put prices on what this would look like, and so you'll see these listed below. $2.9 million for these existing park projects, and that's playground, shade structures, those kind of things spread out throughout town. Singing Wind improvements. Skate park's I think the first one on that list. Shade structures, building improvements to some of the facilities that we have out there, and dog park improvements. KSP, we've got $1.4 million, and Louise Hayes, we have $200,000 in there. So that's the list of Parks and Rec projects that are under the purview of Parks and Rec and the recommendations from their board. Okay.
Can you go back to one slide, please, before you move on to this one? Thank you. I'm trying to figure out, where's the Guadalupe Park improvements? I see that on our
We took
list.
that one off of there, didn't we? We did. Yeah, sorry, we took, that one was taken off of there for an individual park. I think for existing park improvement projects, it's in there for replacement of equipment for the playground, but the individual items, separate and apart from that, were taken off.
What was that?
Because of the cost estimates for the additional projects, so we had to cut somewhere.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. How much were we looking at overage? Do we know?
We'll get to the scenarios as we get further in. And so, what was the total for that park? We'll get to it.
Okay, sure. Okay,
Yeah.
whenever you get it. Thank you.
Okay. You got what you need on this slide?
Yes, thank you.
All right, the Heart of the Hills Heritage Center is the next discussion topic. So as I said earlier, the board met yesterday, made recommendation to the city council for inclusion into this bond project and the request for the remaining balance of our design build projects. So we're at 3.25 funded for our design build. That was our initial blush at it. The updated costs put the whole project, well, the full use of the assembly at $5.3 million. So there's a $2 million gap between those two. There's some limited occupancy that comes with the second floor based on limitations that they can do for the constructability of the house for the second floor, the work that they'll have to do. And in discussing that with our code officials and our fire marshals and what we feel safe with, the Heart of the Hills folks are going to go out and look for a historic designation, and the city will be the applicant. It's our building. Thank you. Guadalupe Park was $170,000.
Thank you.
Yep. So with the historic designation, we have some code, we got a little more leeway on our code to allow for more use on the second floor and the ability to use the third floor. So there's going to be a lot of work that has to get done on the project, but this is a path forward for this project. And so, again, everything here has Kerrville 2050 tied within it. And
Mike, if we can back up just a little bit.
Yeah.
So on the Heritage Hill project, so the historic designation should be a given, right?
yeah, that's just our local designation. So the code book doesn't reference where it has to come from.
Okay.
So this is a local code designation, and I believe we can start, if my memory serves, we can start with a letter from the Kerr Historical Commission that, attests to what the intent is, and then the full accreditation coming during that process. That's my understanding of it. So building permits won't be issued until we have some of that clarity, right? So that's the reason we can move forward in this, is that historic designation would be coming.
And so the second floor could be used, can be open to the public, you
Yes, ma'am.
think?
Yes, ma'am, it can.
It
It'll
can.
have limited occupancy depending on a number of things. So there'll be a load limit, and depending on the uses that they have for the presentations within each of those spaces, kind of think of it this way, it's like, for every person weighted display, you have to take away a person for the occupancy, so we all have to make some assumptions. So Angela met with the folks from the design build team and kind of talked through what their plan was, and so there will be a limit to that second floor in terms of how many people can go up there, and it is based on, again, some assumptions of this is what the exhibit's going to look like in this room, in this room, in this room, and that's going to have that load, that amount of weight on it. And then the third floor would be for staff only.
Staff offices?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And so they're very comfortable that they can fit or make this fit and work for them?
I have a letter attesting to that fact. Yes, ma'am. They are ready to move forward.
Okay.
So.
Sent that to us. Is that the same letter you sent to us?
I did.
You did? Okay, good.
Thank you.
All right. I didn't, yeah, so glad
Right,
you did.
no. City manager did.
So their need is 2 million.
That will fulfill the assumptions we have on the full use of the assembly, that option A, that we got from Marksman the last time we were here, and that would give them full use of the facility. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So not 2.3, I mean, we're looking at 2 million.
2 million.
2 million, okay.
Any more questions on that? Okay. All right. Now, this one, I'll get back to that. This is, so that's, all right, we did Parks and Rec projects that are currently in existence. The city-owned AC Shriner building that we have an agreement with HHHC, that's next. And the building will be maintained by HHHC in terms of the operations of it. There is a sinking account to cover the cost of the renovations to it in the future beyond what we have now. And now I wanted to present a project that you all discussed with EIC last week. And this is at Granger McDonald Park. There is a request from the Guadalupe River Center folks for the EIC and the city to consider paving and landscaping and creating a dock and a boat ramp and a walkway along Granger McDonald Park. So let me get into the specifics here. My understanding is that this design matches kind of what UGRA would like every other design to be like. So permeable pavers, landscaping that has stormwater, that would have catchments that would then feed into a rainwater harvesting system that would then be used for landscaping. So the rainwater harvesting system would cover that. Go through the breakdown of the project request. So between the parking and the landscaping, it's $1.75 million. It's around $800,000 for permeable pavers, and $750,000 for the landscaping. There's $115,000 in concrete flat work for the boat ramp, and then $90,000 in curbing. There's the riverfront boardwalk, which is 14.5 feet wide, and okay, everybody sees it right there. And the estimate on that is $321,000. And lastly is a handicap accessible piers for $121,000, and you can see these images here. I can say that in Palestine we had a handicap accessible swing for wheelchairs. It was one of the coolest things I've ever been a part of, and really excited when we got a chance to do it. And when somebody was using it, it was amazing. So this is a really forward-thinking feature. So that whole ask, this again is the Granger McDonald Park portion of it. Behind it is the River Center space, and just so you had this was the renderings that you were all shown, I think, months ago, last year maybe. So again, for the city park side, this is the parking lot, the landscaping, the ramp, and the boardwalk piece attached to that, and that request is $2.2 million from those folks. Questions on that one?
Is this included in the 25 million proposed?
So we were directed to come back to you all with options.
But what's being recommended to council, this is not in the list of projects, correct?
It's in a couple of options.
Okay, can you explain that?
I'll go to the next slide and show you.
All right.
All right, so I'm going to run through, and I have this for every single iteration that we have here. So we
Gotcha.
wanted to bring you different options.
Okay, great.
So with the assumptions that we made, the three projects that we started out with this discussion internally with staff was the Calu Theater, Olympic pool improvements, and the golf course. And with the amended numbers from the Olympic pool, with the interest being what it was, that's 15. So that's $15 million. So that is the $15 million option there. $17 million option has all three of those, and then includes Heart of the Hills at $2 million. $20 million bond, option one of this, includes all of those things, and then includes the River Trail Downtown Phase 2 for $3 million, and that is $20 million bond option right there. Option two for the $20 million bond replaces the Downtown River Trail with the Granger McDonald Park improvements and existing park improvements. That would be most likely new playgrounds and shade structures within the system. And then I put it on here, but I didn't know where this was going to go. $25 million. So that goes, the first option of this is the River Trail going down to G Street. Mostly funding the existing park improvements that Parks Board recommended. They recommended 2.9, this is 1.9. Singing Wind Park Master Plan improvements at 1.5, KSP Park improvements at 1.4, and Louise Hayes Park improvements at 200, for a total of 25 for this option. And then the second option being existing park improvements at 1.9, Singing Wind, and also including Granger McDonald Park improvements at 2.2. So 15, 17, two options at 20, and 2 options at 25. With that, I will turn it over. Wait, I'm not quite done. Should you all decide you want to continue, we'd bring this to EIC at their meeting with the request that came from City Council. Then if EIC was amenable to the idea of it at all, we would publish it in the newspaper 2 times per state law, and then 60 days after the first publication in the newspaper, we would then hold probably a joint hearing between you all and do the procedures that we have in place for this type of thing here, which are listed below. Resolutions authorizing y'all to undertake the projects, sales tax remittance, public hearings on the projects, and approving the resolutions. And then the bond council would proceed to do their business, sell the bonds, and then we could start working on the projects probably in January, sometime there. And I think that's it. I'm ready for any questions.
Mike?
If there are none?
I was just gonna ask, do you have those options somewhere where we can see in a comprehensive?
At a glance?
I mean, I wish we had a printed out copy of this so we could see them all
That's
without flipping through them.
Okay. I don't, so let's do the flipping for now, if you don't mind.
I'm just trying to, if you don't have it, then I'll take notes right here. So I got option 1, I got option, the $17 million option. Yep, and then there's a 20. There's 2 options here. So the first one is
River Trail, Phase 2, so that's Pavilion down to G Street.
Back up one, please, Michael.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
better idea.
I'll cheat so I can take a picture of it.
Same, hold on. Y'all are really making us work for $25 today. All right, well, I'll get the next one. Okay. Oh.
Yep.
Got it?
Got it, sir.
Okay.
Okay.
Is that it?
That's it. So you have basically, what we wanted to present was 4 different funding plateaus, as it were. 15, 17, 20, and 25. So.
Okay, any questions, comments before we listen to our speakers? All right,
And I'm sorry, we have 5 citizens.
5, okay.
Yes.
All right, thank you, Michael, and we'll have our speakers come then as Shelley calls them up.
Lane Carrera.
Mayor, Council. I'm here to support the project inclusion of the full $2.2 million investment into Grainer McDonald Park. This investment includes permeable paver parking, an 80-foot wide, feet-friendly river access ramp, a staging area for events, and handicap-accessible floating piers and kayak launches that will be attached to a 200-foot long wide boardwalk that's 14 feet, 200-foot long and 14 feet wide boardwalk. We believe that all the options presented in the recent workshop investing in Nimitz Lake will have a far greater return on investment as it relates to sales tax revenue and new ad valorem taxes. First, the Kerrville Triathlon, which is our largest economic event, is at risk due to the land that they currently are using, which is for sale. We need a permanent location to continue building on our success with this event. The park's completion will enable the event to grow and potentially become the largest triathlon in Texas. This event brings over 5,000 to 6,000 people to our city and generates well over $2 million in direct economic impact. Second, having a boardwalk, open spaces, handicap accessible floating piers, and river ramps will provide a new location for our city to host and watch water sports on the river. Our foundation has already has a committee actively reaching out to surrounding groups such as the Sea Scouts, High Five Events, Lake Canyon Yacht Club, Boy Scouts of America, Texas Racing and Kayak Racing Association, Shriner University, Kerrville Independent School District, and the Texas Lions Camp, who's interested in the handicap accessible piers. Lake racing and meetup events year-round can bring thousands of new visitors to our town and generate over $1 million in additional economic impact each year. Third, completing this access ignites activities on Nimitz Lake and will benefit the city from expedited development of the properties around the perimeter. of the lake and on Thompson Drive. This $2.2 million investment not only creates a new quality of place, but it has the highest probability to generate significant new ad valorem taxes. As the lake becomes more active, the development of the surrounding land will also become more active. Fourth, permeable parking for filtration may be a little more expensive than tar and asphalt, but it's what is recommended to protect our river from the oils and chemicals that wash directly into the Guadalupe River after a hard rain. By investing in filtrating parking areas, the city shows an alignment with the UGRA best practices and sets a positive example for other developers to follow. The city should play a leadership role with watershed stewardship and water conservation education. In conclusion, if today's recommendations have anything to do with the quality of place and our community's economic development, it's hard to imagine a better application of funds than the investment into Granger McDonald Park. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lisa Nye Saladin.
My name is Lisa Nye Saladin, and I'm the current chair of the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. I'm serving my 18th year on that board. My first year was 1999, and I've watched the growth of the department within the growth of the city take place. We are blessed with many parks, both regional and neighborhood, and have been particularly blessed through the years with great leadership over the parks, coupled with City Council's support. Through that leadership, extensive processes have been put in place. It starts with master plans and community input leading to action items and priority lists. Staff workload, maintenance needs, and budget considerations have been and will be a big factor in determining priorities. Many parks, especially the neighborhood parks, have been upgraded through in-house budgeting and community involvement with ongoing attention over the years. Funding mechanisms are explored when determining how to fund projects, striving to provide the best value and efficiency when evaluating in-house projects versus outsourcing. It is an ongoing process, and park staff through the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board keep communication and ideas flowing to the community. Priority lists get made, but some of the really big projects cannot be funded through the annual parks operational budget, thus the bond ask. Our community all has different priorities. Some think the priority should be the river trail. Others think a swimming complex for area teams and meets should be funded. Still others think that Singing Wind Park, smack in the middle of 4 schools representing all ages, should be developed according to the approved master plan. And then there is the golf course, also worthwhile to keep up and running. Bottom line, there are many worthwhile projects for Kerrville's neighborhood and regional parks, but we need to recognize the process and limits to future staff and budgets. Through all my years serving, there is increasingly a process. Projects get prioritized based on either critical infrastructure or maintenance needs, or based on master planning and resources available to maintain. Park improvement priorities are based on need and focus on reinvesting in existing parks before developing currently undeveloped parks or acquiring new parks. You just can't do it all, and we need to set our staff up to succeed. The priority list for improvements to existing parks that was presented to Council as approved by the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board comes with years and hours planning, community input, and due diligence. The recommendations as approved by the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board should be what goes forward. Projects outside this purview should be considered independently or tabled until all the details are clear, due diligence and best practices are in place, and the next priority list gets presented through the process. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
John Anderson,
I'll yield to the next speaker.
George Baruti.
It's George Brewery, 1616 Glen Road. So my biggest issues are essentially that this is a lot of style and not much substance, ultimately. The city has a lot of needs, and EIC was not set up to be our amenity fund. It was set up to be the Economic Improvement Corporation. essentially return on the investment shown in empowering the citizens with jobs and things of that nature. Yes, you can use the money on projects like this, although I'm not sure about the maintenance of the parks. You can create new ones, but I'm not so sure about the maintenance. But regardless, I don't understand why we would take this big of a leap into a fund that's not designed for such things. We have the amenities that have a tangible return. In particular, the one Mr. Guerrero got up to talk about, the Granger McDonald thing, that's already been invested by the community with public investing to that property. And we were promised a grandiose development plan on those 60 acres to include a river trail along that property and whatnot when we gave them, give or take, $2 million for that project to get underway. To come back and do it again under the same promises of impact to the economy, I think is a little bit scary because, again, we have other needs. If we're going to attack infrastructure in the city with EIC money, I would argue, actually you can. You can't do it through EIC, but the money in EIC can be swept into the general fund if it's unallocated. I'm not suggesting you do it. I'm just saying if we're just looking for a way to spend this money, there's other things we could spend it on. We have no foundation. The city is talking about we have housing problems and all these other things. That's because the people that live here don't have the money to pay for their basic needs. And the city, as it's been stated, doesn't have the money to support, our tax base does not support the maintenance of these items, which is why we're coming to EIC. So we have bigger problems that need to be addressed before we add more infrastructure without any idea of what we're going to do with it. You guys talked at the last council meeting about asset replacement. This is essentially an asset replacement. You're basically replacing parks, but it's asset replacement, and you're using EIC money because you don't have it somewhere else. You got a budgeting problem. It's a difficult one to attack, but spending it all in this manner doesn't allow you to attack it. It pretty much ties your hands to the next project. And one last thing, there is a project that arguably is a need. One of you was on the county bond committee that looked at the need, and I've suggested to both the county, I think I've suggested it here, the ag barn fix. And it has a return on its investment. It has a detailed outline of what they were trying to do. I would argue it's a better use of these dollars and better for the entire community than any one of these projects. So I would urge you to consider doing that before you do these. Thank you.
Celeste Hammond.
Hi, I'm Celeste Hammond from Kerrville, and I'm here to talk about the importance of creating easy access to Nimitz Lake. Nimitz Lake was a huge part of the decision of my husband and I to move to Kerrville because we're both open water swimmers, and we loved Nimitz Lake. It's nice and clear, and it's a beautiful place to swim. And but it's not easy access. I mean, if you want to try to get down to the lake, it's a very steep to get down to the dam, and then swimming in the lake. So I have a couple of stories to tell you about the access. So I was lucky enough when I moved to Kerrville in 2015 to meet some other swimmers who like to swim in the morning, and they're triathletes, and they like to either swim or train in the lake. So we would swim and train in the lake, and then we would get out, and there was a woman that came to watch us most weeks when we would get out, and she said, "Y'all must swim so hard because you're having to crawl out on your hands and knees. You must be definitely so tired." Well, we're not so tired. We just have to get out on our hands and knees. And there's not that many people in Kerrville who are willing to get into the river and get out on their hands and knees. And so also I had another experience just Sunday when I went down to the river to swim and train for the Kerrville Triathlon that's coming up. And I did not realize, I hadn't been down there in quite a few weeks, I didn't realize that the water level is about 4 feet below the top of the dam. So the reason we were on our hands and knees, when the water goes over the dam, you can kick yourself up a little bit, almost to the top of the dam, and then you get on your hands and knees, and then you walk out. So this was 4 feet below. the water. So I was like, oh, I don't know. I better not dive in because I was a little bit afraid of falling backwards and hitting my head. But I was able to scoot on my bottom in the water, swam, and that was fine. Came back, had a good swim, and then I couldn't get out. I could not get out of the river because the lower part of that dam is so full of mud and sludge that has been there for years and years and years accumulating, and that's the part that my knees were in. I was trying to crawl out, I was trying to kick out, anything to try to get my hands up onto the dry part of the dam. I couldn't do it. I went to the seams in the concrete because sometimes you can put your big toe in those seams and push yourself up. Could not find that because they were so deep in the mud and the sludge. Thankfully, somebody came along and wanted to fish. And so when we swim in the river, we wear a water noodle off the back of our legs so that people can see us out there swimming. And I had this water noodle. I could throw it up to the guy up on top. He was able to grab the end of it. He did not want to walk over the edge of the dam because he did not want to get pulled into the water, and both of us couldn't get out. So was able to get that up to him. He pulled me up by backing up to pull me up. And so I think having easy access for all people of Kerrville to get in. So the improvements to the Granger McDonald Park, I think, are really important for a variety and a diverse group of people from Kerrville to utilize Nimitz Lake, which I think is a really precious asset and way underutilized, and was part of the 2050 plan that recreational use of Nimitz Lake be grown and accentuated. And so I am here for that encouragement to do that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ask the other citizen speakers.
Okay, thank you. All right, council, we have a big assignment in front of us, and we have some, okay, thank you. So, questions, comments, thoughts?
Well, essentially, I'm going to say somewhat of what I said when we were talking about quality of life projects before, that we need to be very careful when we start acquiring land or buildings or structures. We have the Heritage Center is an example. The Calu Theater is another one that we didn't have, and now we have maintenance that comes with that, just like everything. Yet we don't have the revenue for it. We don't have the money for it. So I think we need to be very careful when that's just a general, overarching, broad statement about anything moving forward with land or building acquisition in the future. Because this ties in directly into what we're having to deal with now, which is we don't have the funds to either maintain what we have, or all these additional projects are coming up, and now we go to EIC and say, here's our wish list, can you make this happen for us? I think that's a dangerous practice to set up, and we're doing it, we're continuing it right now. One of the projects that I would say I will, first of all, I think it's interesting to see how we're funding a lot of these quality of life projects, but where are the essential projects that need to get done for the city? These sales taxes, 4B sales taxes, can be used for infrastructure, for water infrastructure, yet I don't see any of the needs that our community is facing right now on this project list. One of the interesting projects that came forward recently, it was at the EIC, a City Council Joint Workshop, and it's before us today, and is not being recommended by the advisory board, is the Granger McDonald Park improvements. And it's interesting because the corporation who came to us initially said that that project was going to be 100% privately funded. And when I asked, what do you need from the city? And they said, well, when we go to investors and we want to try to get money and funds for this project, we need to show that the city supports it. So we need you to pass a resolution of support. And I said, are you ever going to ask for anything else? Because the resolution seemed very broad and undefined terms that there may be in-kind contributions. And they said, no, it's 100% privately funded. We don't need anything from the city besides your support in this resolution. And now here we get a $2.2 million proposal and ask for this project for the River Center. It's being proposed by members of that board for that corporation. So that's one that I have pause on, and that I knew from the start that this was going to happen, and here it is. So I pause on that one, and including the fact that the board didn't recommend it. I'm going to go with, I would not support doing that project right now. And not to say I don't support what they're going to do. If it's privately funded, go for it. But when you tell us it's going to be privately funded and then come back to the city and ask for something, it shows a little bit, it's contrary to what you told us initially. The Kalu Theater improvements, that kind of, I guess, that needs to be done. I see that's been lacking for a long time. The roof and the HVAC system, and any other improvements that we can make, or any other projects that we're going to take under, need to really show a true economic impact and return to our community. Otherwise, I don't think the funds and the EIC is serving the purpose that it was established for.
Thank you. Mr. Harris, you ready to
Yeah,
give us some thoughts?
absolutely no thought to 25 million. That's my thought. That is, we sat here, I'm gonna kind of fall back on my heels as a banker. Greg Appel was here, I was here. Greg said, at 25 million, we're at over 50% of our funds. If you're at 50% in the banking world, I've got one of my co-workers here with me. If you're at 50%, we're gonna say, sorry, we can't do anything for you. I will not, shall not, cannot put ourselves in that situation to do so. 20 million, that's a lot of money. Things can be done. Councilmember Garcia, you said the Kalu Theater, that is a wonderful asset that we have in our city. And thank you for saying that you support fixing that, because that is, I think it's underutilized for what we have here. Golf course, it maintains itself. It doesn't make money, but it pays for itself. We have several huge events that come to town. We just hosted the 75th Heart of the Hills Golf Tournament, 75 years in a row. You know, that's something we don't want to lose. If I was going to sit here, Madam Mayor, and say I'm going to make a recommendation, I like the $17 million, because it gives us everything we're looking for. Really, what was brought up. If we were going to go to the 20 million, I'd say flip a coin between the parks and the Granger Park. You know, then looking back at staffing in a new park, what we're going to have to do for that. But, you know, 17 gives us the Heart of the Hills Heritage Center. That gives us, you know, what else we need here that we discussed. And it takes care of the pool. So that would be my thoughts, my feelings. It's, we got to prioritize what we think. We all put stickers on quality of life at our council retreat, and
Except me.
but that's where I'm at on it.
All right. Did you have a number, Roman?
A number?
A number?
17.
I mean, you don't have to have. I just didn't know if
Oh,
you
which
did,
options I'd support?
or if you did.
I don't have one right now. I don't even know if we need to do a bond if it's going to be this amount. I want to know if we have other options if we do like the minimum.
Okay. All right. Mr.
Yes.
Herring?
I serve both on the city council and the EIC board. A few other members of the EIC board are here. I agree with Mr. Harris that I'm getting cupcake all over my papers. I agree with Mr. Harris that I don't think $25 million will fly with that board. And so our options are either 17 or 20. The 17 does provide for the top 4 priorities on the agenda bill. However, 20 gives us some options that would improve our community. The River Trail Phase 2 of Louis Hayes Park and G Street. I've walked that area a lot growing up, and I think it would be a nice addition. But I am not opposed to the Granger McDonald Park improvements plus $800,000 of existing park improvements, and here's why. The problem right now with Nimitz Lake is, as was described, you can't get in it. And then if you get in it, you can't get out of it. And while Mr. Garcia is correct that that board said that they were not going to ask for funding for their center, this is actually a city park. That land was dedicated to the city as a park. And so I think the improvements being requested are mainly for the park. I may be wrong, and I could be corrected. But, you know, that would open up the Nimitz Lake, in my opinion. And if this group felt that they could support 20, I think I would support the $20 million bond, Quality Life Projects option 2. I may be the only one, but that's what I think.
Yeah, and I concur with you, Joe, that the Kalu Theater, we've had that asset since the 60s. And it is from neglect that we are having to spend this kind of money to repair it. The Olympic pool, 50 years old, we could have done things years ago, but we have a tendency to put off our quality of life projects, just like the county does with their ag barn. And then damage and expense come knocking on our door, and we got no way around it. We got to fix it. I am in favor of the $20 million bond option 2 because I believe that along with the Kalu Theater, the Olympic pool, the golf course, and the Heritage Center, that the Granger McDonald Park improvements would add a significant amount of economic impact to our community. Okay, thank you.
I'd like to just say one thing else. The budget for the Heritage Center includes an amount for maintenance, for improvements. And at least that project has an amount included for future.
It has. It does. It does have a sinking fund in it.
I have a question for these gentlemen over here. If the city funds the infrastructure for the Granger McDonald Park, is your foundation or your nonprofit prepared to provide the maintenance to that park, or are you going to rely on the city to do that?
We've always felt like we would provide the maintenance for that entire area.
Okay.
So I think even just recently, I had a conversation with Kim a little bit. You know, the river is low right now. We need to look at the stumps. And I offered to pay to get the stumps marked.
Okay.
Also, we're going to go ahead and do a drone around the lake to start taking inventory on hazards and things like
Okay.
that. So we would be honored to take care of it.
Okay, so that would eliminate at least some of the concern with the expense that it would be to the city to maintain that park.
So, in discussions with staff and discussions with Mr. Guerrero about how that would work, was a discussion about a park and Parks Operation and Maintenance Agreement, the POMA, right? And so there's two concerns from the city standpoint, right? There's the operations and maintenance side of it, and then there's the capital side of it. And so in our back and forth in our discussions, it was, we have to memorialize this if you all decide you want to do it, but that the River Center would fund the maintenance and operations and the capital repairs of this. Because when I looked at, if the city were to have to come in and do those upgrades in 15 years, well, we're the city. We come back with some asphalt and you got your new parking lot. That's how we do it. That's usually the way that that's going to happen. And that's not our city. That's just about every city. And so this is a vision for what they want to get accomplished, and a good showpiece for UGRA, I would say, too, and the city. But from a future capital standpoint, that was a concern, and they alleviated that. They're willing to take on that and put that, we have to memorialize it in the agreement, but there you go.
Okay, well, I will weigh in. The Callow Theater, that's a must-do, no questions. The Olympic pool is a must-do. We've got to do something there. The golf course is a must-do, and the golf course, the Callow and the golf course, both will bring us sales dollars. Absolutely, economic development right there. Heart of the Hills Heritage Center, I think we've got history there, and since they can use that, it will work for them even with that extra money. Heart of the Hills, in my estimation, is not going to bring us a lot of extra sales dollars. I look at it as one of those things, people will enjoy it when they're here, but it's not necessarily like the theater when you're going to come to see a play. It's here, so you'll go. So I don't look at it as a big economic developer in and of itself. My number changes a little bit. I would love to see the river trail. I think that's on the side of the river with our businesses over and probably not a lot of time. I think we'll see those businesses open to the backside. They would open to the river, and I look at that as a very, very much of a potential economic development there. I think that will improve our sales taxes. And the Granger McDonald Park, I know that they at one time said, hey, we're not going to need anything. That entire project is going to bring us all kinds of sales dollars. It is going to bring people to town for all kinds of things. And in my book, that is important. It needs to be on there simply because it is one of those economic development drivers. So my number is 22.2. And I took off the parking improvements on option 2, added the river trail, and so mine ends up at 22.2. And out of those, the pool, I don't look at the Olympic pool as being a big economic driver. It's there. We need to supply it. It's for our citizens. But overall, I don't look at it as bringing in lots and lots of sales dollars. It's something people will use, but it's not a big economic driver for me. But, so I've got, I think, 3 on there, the Callow, the golf course, and Shriner, and the river trail that would bring in economic dollars. The other two are things that will be good to have.
So Mayor, can I clarify, you had option 2 and you just switched out the existing park improvements with the river trail?
And added the river trail.
Okay.
Yeah. So it makes it 22.2.
Now, we're being asked for the Granger McDonald Park improvements because we own the land. Why don't we sell the land?
Well, the land is, it's dedicated per the plat as a park, and so the only way to divest yourselves of that is to take it to the voters.
And then you lose your access to the river.
No, we don't. How?
I mean, you could sell it. That's the way that you would do it, is...
We don't even have access with it now, so we wouldn't lose anything. I say take it to the voters.
But it is part of what takes everyone down to the water.
So the entirety of the property is in the floodplain
Okay,
for that park property.
okay. Is that what,
It was, I'm not sure all the considerations of it. I wasn't around when this was platted up.
right?
But you can't build on a lot that's in the floodplain like that. And so that was a consideration, I think, back whenever it was done for creation of the park.
So if we were to sell it and someone buys it, can they do the same thing that we are being asked to do? Can't they do, the,
Parking is about all you could put out there, yeah.
so we're being asked to do, we can do it, but if we sell it, someone else cannot do it?
No, I believe, no, they can.
Okay,
Yeah.
they can?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can't build a building on.
Right, well,
on it,
and
but-
we're not being asked to do that even right
Parking.
now, so that's a moot point. So I say sell it and let a corporation or someone else buy it and they can take on the cost of that. That's a less cost for the city.
Mayor, it sounds like we have, 2 members at 20, 1 member at 22.5, and 1 member at 17, and, I'm not gonna speak for Mr. Garcia, but he may be at 0. How would you ask us to resolve that?
Joe, I said 17 or 20.
I'm sorry, I wasn't trying to speak for you.
No, you're fine. I just want to make sure that I was clear on that.
Okay, I had included you as a twin.
Can I ask you which option you're good with on a 20?
No, because I don't know yet.
Okay.
So,
All right.
I listening to Councilmember Herring, birthday boy, that's what I'll call him tonight. And listening to the mayor about what they both said about walking in the park. I love our river trail. I have a lot of people when they come to Kerrville, they compliment us on the river trail. But I would probably lean against the river trail and go toward the Granger McDonald Park, just for what it could offer us and the ability to allow our citizens to go into the river and enjoy what we have. And what I really like is the fact that they are offering something for our ADA compliancy and we have a lot of handicapped citizens in Kerrville and Kerr County that could utilize that and get out and enjoy it. So that's more where I would lean if I go the 20 route.
Well, and that has been part of, as I understand, that's been part of their mission, is to be able to serve a group that isn't, and in many ways. There's other ways with camps and education, all kinds of things. Okay, so we've got Brenda at 20 with option 2.
With option 2.
And Joe at 20 with option 2. Jeff, you would go 20, I don't want to put words in your mouth.
I'll go 20
would
at the
go-
max with option 2.
With option 2. Okay, as much as I hate to give up the river trail at this time,
I understand.
yes.
It hurts.
Yes, it does, and that's just, anyway. All right, I would
So what do we,
concede to 20 with option 2.
so option 2 as it stands, as presented, or did you make changes to that?
No, it would be as it stands.
As it stands.
Okay. All right, well, I already know people are gonna think I'm a naysayer. If y'all go with that option, I vote against it. So, to provide, to indicate that I am not 100% against doing this, I'll move to approve, the first option that was given to us, the $15 million bond. Just that one, nothing else.
The $15 million, okay? Do we have a second for the $15 million bond? Okay, it dies for lack of a second.
Y'all can't ever say that I didn't try to prove something.
We won't say it.
I know you will, but
I mean,
it's on record at least.
for that.
All right, do we have another option?
I would move that we present to the EIC the option of a $20 million bond as described as option 2.
Second. We have a second from Brenda. All in favor, raise your right hand. Are you with us, Jeff? Okay, all right. So we have 4.
Yeah.
4 and opposed.
I remember you voted for it.
All right, we have 1 opposed, being Mr. Garcia.
Is that motion in the correct form? We're okay with that motion?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll probably attach that option to.
Option 2.
I haven't talked to the minutes.
I have 2 minor points. The EIC is an independent board.
Yes.
They can
That was-
do whatever they want to do.
Correct.
Yes.
And they may do something completely different than what we've asked them to do.
It's on record.
And second, the Olympic pool is older than 50 because I had swimming lessons there when I was little.
Okay. We have completed, which one were we on here? We were on 7B.
Thank y'all. I appreciate it.
We're good to go.
I'm good to go. We'll take it to EIC. We'll see if they say yes to that option. If they say yes, then we'll put that publication out. If they want to modify that, I feel that it's important to bring that back to you all. If they say, no, we want to do some different version of this, then we would bring it back to you before we would try it all again.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you.
All right.
All right, thank you, and I know you and your staff have been through a lot with this, and appreciate all your work.
They're awesome. Y'all are awesome. Thank you.
All right, let's move to 7C.
Amendment by Headwater Groundwater Conservation District to its drought contingency plan, and we do have 2 citizen speakers signed up.
All right.
Good
Take it
evening, Mayor and Council.
away.
How are y'all tonight? We got some rain. I was hoping we'd get enough that we wouldn't have to have this discussion, but turns out it didn't quite rain enough. There is one more little cell coming through, but it should probably be through in the next few minutes. So, first of all, I'd like to acknowledge Tom Jones is here today. He's the board president for Headwaters. Appreciate him being here to hear this presentation. He was very good to the city during their presentation a few weeks ago, very complimentary of how we're operating our water system, and really had nothing negative to say. He had their desire is quite frankly just for us to be in the same drought stage that they're in. So with that, I'll start the presentation. Really, they changed 2 different rules over there. One was an exemption that the city used to have for having a conjunctive use permit, which basically acknowledged our 4 different sources of water back when it was implemented. They have removed that exemption for us, and then they implemented a new rule that basically says the city of Kerrville will need to be in the corresponding drought stage that Headwaters is in. So with that, we'll talk a little bit about what that means to the city of Kerrville, a little bit about Headwaters rules as well. So Headwaters Groundwater Conservation District is empowered by the state of Texas, and their main objective is to protect groundwater by limiting pumping. They do that by lot sizes. They do it by well spacing. They also do it by volume control. There's a few other aspects, but that's the big thrust of the groundwater district. So their current pumping limit is set at 80,000 gallons per acre per year. So if you have a well and you have 1 acre of land, you're going to get roughly 80,000 gallons of water, as long as that's typically they require bigger tracts than that, but that's kind of the relationship there. The city of Kerrville groundwater permit currently is 1,174,800,000 gallons per year. Currently, we're about 9% of that. I know earlier in the presentation I saw 8. Actually, is going up just a hair, is 8.4, but I rounded it to 9. So on the average, we use about 20%, give or take a little bit annually. So how do they get to their drought stages? They use the same trigger for all their methods, or for moving from one stage to the other. They average 4 different groundwater wells and get that depth, and they come up with this feet above sea level. When they're at 1,410 feet above sea level, they're in stage 1, and then 1,400 even is stage 2, 1,390 stage 3, and 1,380 is stage 4. That is the main thrust of it. They also look at the Palmer Drought Index, and they also look at the flow of the Guadalupe River. So that all kind of helps push them from one stage to another, and also and acknowledge what's going on in the environment and how that's applicable to them. So their main source is looking at groundwater and determining what their drought stage is the thrust of that slide. So what does stage 1, 2, 3, and 4 mean to them? There's two different facets of wells that they monitor, or I guess they're probably more than that, but the two that I'm going to talk about tonight is the permitted wells and then the exempt wells. So permitted wells would be the city of Kerrville well. Any well that produces more than 25,000 gallons a day and used for municipal use or golf course or irrigation, any of the bigger type wells are all considered these permitted wells. In their drought stages, they ask for a % reduction in those permitted wells. The permitted wells, you can see there, it's in stage 1, they ask for a 10% reduction. In stage 2, 20%, stage 3, 30, and so on through 4. The exempt wells, which are less than 25,000 gallons a day, and are typically the residential type wells, they fall under what is called the recommended restrictions. Those recommended restrictions are very close to what the city has. There's a few nuances between the two because mainly they're on groundwater and we have groundwater and surface water, but they're very close. The issue is, or the difference really is that those exempt wells, they don't have an enforcement department that actually goes out and enforces those people to do those rules. It's just strictly voluntary. So how is that different than the city of Kerrville? Obviously, the city of Kerrville, we had a presentation. These next few slides I'm going to go through really quickly because the last time we talked, or last month when we talked, we did a big presentation on safe operating capacity and all the different sources of water we have. But we'll just touch on them again tonight so kind of refresh our memory. So prior to the Headwaters meeting on the 9th, the city was subject to the groundwater restrictions. We've already talked that because we had the conjunctive use policy. But the thing that it doesn't really consider in this new ruling that they've put in there is it really doesn't acknowledge the city's 5 sources of water that we use. Them telling us, hey, you just need to model or follow our drought stages doesn't account for all of the infrastructure that the city's put in over the years to include the surface water treatment plant, the lake, Nemitz Lake, our ASR system, the number of groundwater wells that we have, and also our reuse system. So as you can see on the bottom of this chart, this is actually the amount of water that's in the ASR wells right now. That's from, no, it's way too small to see. If you got your magnifying glass out and you really had a good printer, you can see it goes all the way back to, I think it's 74, not 94, to current. It's about 800 million, almost 900 million gallons of water, which is currently in there, and that's still where we're at today. You can see it's fluctuating. We're actually using a little bit out, using down right now. It's trending down as you can see. This is our water supply chart. When I talk about those 5 different sources of water and what the city does to reconcile that demand versus supply, this is the information that we use. This is the same chart I used a couple weeks ago. It's a little bit dated. I didn't update it for this particular presentation because I didn't want to get into all the details of it, but just to know that we account for surface water, groundwater, ASR water, and the lake water within this document, and that is really how we move through our stages, in and out of our stages. So the other piece of that, again, going really quickly through this as we talked about them before, is the demand side of that. How is our city responding to what drought stages we're in versus what kind of water supply we actually have? So there's another chart that we actually use daily. So the city of Kerrville's water supply status, we're currently in stage 2. An interesting fact that we're using about the same water. It says a little less water than the city used on the daily basis in 1994. It's actually very similar. We used about 4 to 5 million gallons a day back then. And in stage 2, we're at about that 4 million gallon mark as well. The population was roughly 6,000 people different. And that I just pull that out to say it's conservation. Conservation is working. I mean, we've used the same volume of water that we've used for years and years. It's working for us. Our plan is working. The second bullet point, to acknowledge the city of Kerrville is the only retail water provider in Kirk County that complies with Headwaters rules. We think, judging by
a graph that we asked them to send us and try to figure out how many of the other water purveyors in Kerrville, kind of our competitors, actually get the 10% reduction, the 10%, the 20%, the 30, or the 40% reduction. How much of that are they actually seeing? We pulled just a small little bit of information from them. Didn't want to overburden them with a big public records request, but just to get a feel for it. There was only one other entity that even got close, and they're not a water provider, it's actually a ranch that's doing a lot less irrigating now than what they had been in the past. So I think that's an interesting piece. The demand reduction after going into stage 2, we've seen, so we went into stage 2 about 3 weeks ago, right around then. I didn't actually write down the exact date, but we've seen a reduction in how much our citizens are using. Our system, it does work. It actually is, that when we go from one stage to the next, we actually see a reduction, and that gives us another few weeks or maybe a month of time before they kind of catch up and the drought, maybe another well comes offline, or maybe the water plant, we get curtailed by the water master's office. We see that reduction, and it may move us into the next stage, but when we ramp it up and say, okay, there's going to be less irrigation, or there's going to be less demand, we actually see that reduction, and we're seeing that currently. The current lake level is about 4.6 feet low, 4.16 feet lower than normal. It's going down, right? There's no doubt. I mean, we just talked about building something on Nimitz Lake. It's lower than it typically is. The only way that, well, I shouldn't say the only way. The way that a rainwater catchment system works the best is you have to have capacity in your vessel when it rains to refill it. And so if you're always running your lake at full capacity, you'd never be able to catch the rain and be able to fully utilize it, because whatever rains on you, it just goes downstream and gets outside of your catch. So actually pulling that lake down, giving us a little bit of capacity at the top of that lake, gives us an opportunity to catch a rain like we just had today. So we may catch, I don't know. I won't know until a few days from now if we caught anything at all. But if we were at the top of our reservoir, it would just overspill and go down the stream. So the lake is working as well. Nimitz Lake has about an estimated 6 to 10 feet of water in it still. That's about 60 days, 90 days of water left that we can tell. It's kind of hard to tell because you get silt in there. You don't know how fast it's going to run into the water treatment plant and those things. So we give a little bit of a range there. But we're pulling it down, and it's actually working for us to do it this way. Everybody's concerned about the lake, and we're concerned about the lake as well. We're concerned about groundwater. We have, we live here. This is a real, the environment is a true concern. So what are some of the cons of implementing the Headwaters rule? What can we look and maybe see that would be important to the city? If we implement the rules as written, that we mirror the Headwaters stage, that prevents us from moving freely within our drought stages. So if we have an event that happens and we need to go to a higher drought stage, say one of our wells comes offline, or the water master cuts us off of water, or some catastrophe happens, and we actually need to go to our drought stage 5, we won't have the ability to do that. Headwaters doesn't have a drought stage 5. And the other side of that coin is the same way. If something happens and we all of a sudden we can go back a stage and say, hey, it's rained a lot. The aquifer hasn't recharged yet, but the river's flowing again, and there's enough water in our lake that it's full. We don't have the ability to go back and say, hey, now instead of being at stage 4, maybe we go back to stage 3 for a little while. It just removes some of that flexibility from our water system. Conditions like to fill up, so we're down to the 4th bullet point. So there's a big expense associated with all of that, right? The city has spent millions and millions, probably north of $100 million, I would estimate, on building a water treatment plant, buying the lake from UGRA back in the day, or building that lake back then, building an ASR system, building a reuse pond. All of that thing is wildly expensive. This rule doesn't really account for all that expense. Matter of fact, it kind of flies in the face of all that expense. So our current ordinances governing safe operating capacity no longer applicable. by following the rules specifically, there again, doesn't give us the flexibility. We already covered that. So water revenues is the last one. You see it's kind of at the bottom of the list. It needs to be talked about. I don't know that it's high on the list. I mean, water is the most important thing. Revenues is going to fall second to that. We've done some preliminary calculation, kind of figure out what might happen if we go into stage 4 for the next, till the end of October. It's about where we ran to, or where Julie ran it to, is about 20, maybe 20% loss in revenues, 25%, somewhere in there. Something to consider. Maybe not the most important thing, but definitely something to consider. What are some of the pros? So every cons, there's pros too, right? What can we get out of it for us? Moving into stage 2 and stage 4 will make the water that we have last even longer. Nobody knows, especially me. How long is this drought going to last? You know, where do we need to be? How much water is enough water? Being conservative with that, that's important. You know, doing the best thing we can with the water we have left. I think that's number one in my opinion as to what are the pros to this thing. Being good neighbors to the people in the city, you know, to the county, and the impact on our environment. Man, the impact on the environment's big. Not to say that I've seen some pictures of trees dying between Centerpoint and Kerrville. I went out, those similar trees are dying north of town. It's not what the city's doing, it's the environment, but what we're doing does have an impact on some of that. So it's something to consider. That's another pro. Environmental controls. This would actually kind of incorporate an environmental control on our safe operating capacity. We talked about earlier how it's more based on supply and demand. We don't have the Palmer Drought Index. We don't have river flow in there. It's a little bit, maybe it needs to be considered. This would kind of consider that. So with all of that pros, along with the fact that we're seeing a severe condition of the river, we're seeing our groundwater supplies diminishing a little bit. What I'd like to do is I'd like to offer a letter to the city manager that would allow us to go into stage 4 drought restrictions. It would take into account Headwaters ruling to the degree that it's applicable to us, because we think it is an environmental emergency, and it would be allowing us to go into stage 4. It would give us some time to understand the rules, try to work with Headwaters, determine what is the best method to implement or to carry their ideas into our rules, try to adopt a ruling that makes them happy, makes us happy, and still operable within our system. It frees up a little bit of time. So that would be my recommendation, and I will be submitting that to the city manager tomorrow. So what does stage 4 look like to us? Stage 4 is going to, there will no longer be irrigation. Let me go back to the next slide too. So these are all the different stages. The big one in stage 4 is that there's no more sprinkler systems allowed. You can still water a little bit with your handheld hose, and there's times and dates on there. Let me go to the next slide. It gets a little small. We'll make this available to everybody. Obviously, it'll be a posting that we do if we do indeed go into stage 4. Excuse me. So the big one there is like landscape watering with hose-in sprinklers or automatic sprinkler systems are prohibited at all times. You know, that's going to be important for all of our citizens to know if we do indeed go this direction. Landscape watering conducted by the means of a handheld hose or with a manual or automatic shutoff nozzle operated by one person. A faucet-filled bucket or watering can with a capacity of 5 gallons or less, or a drip irrigation system is prohibited at all times except between the hours of 7 p.m. and 11 p.m. and between the hours of 6 a.m. and 9 a.m. So that's saying you can go out there and water your yard with a handheld hose or a bucket, not to exceed 5 gallons between those hours. The reason that we pick those hours, one is it's in our ordinance, and two, that is when people are awake. And so a lot of people say we would like to water between midnight and 2 because we feel like we get better bang for our buck. Being a citywide ordinance, it was discussed in committee at that time. We have to, if we're going to do this, we have to do it after working hours and while people are awake. So that's why we settled on those hours. There's about 4 more criteria if you'd like. I can read through all of them. The next one's going to be minimizing the amount of water coming out of fire hydrants to 10,000 gallons, washing down sidewalks, driveways, parking lots, tennis courts, things that are not health concerns is going to be prohibited. Use of for ornamental fountains is also prohibited. The use of water for dust control, that's potable water. They can still go to our wastewater treatment plant and get that reuse water and still use it for dust control and things of that nature. Washing down buildings washing down buildings or structures for the purpose other than immediately fire protection or when is required to perform duties related to construction activities with a power washing unit. So you can do it as long as it's for fire protection or construction activities. Use of bulk water, there's a couple more there. And like I said, we'll put this out on the public. We've covered the big ones. The last one really that may need to be covered is washing down motor vehicles. You can still wash those at commercial car washes. This prohibits them being washed by hand where the water's getting into the street. Most of the people park in the street and wash them. And that's why that's being prohibited during stage 4. So with that, I know I went a little fast, but I will take any questions that you have.
Council?
How
any
long are you
questions?
anticipating this for? Until Headwaters changes theirs, or?
Well, the way that I would write it in the letter is till conditions change that we deem fit that we need to change drought stages. If it's go up or go down, because of all of those reasons we just stated. If we have an event that happens that we need to go to stage 5, I think we need that flexibility. So until the need arises for us to change.
Okay. So there's a possibility that we may go down to a lower than stage 4 if Headwaters does not.
Yes, but for the foreseeable future, I think in the agenda item, the requested action was for the board to direct us to set up a meeting with Headwaters and their board for us to discuss the options and try to work through that. So I would hope that we could work through that relatively quickly, maybe in a few weeks' time, and then amend our rules and find some common ground there.
Okay. A couple of comments I want to make. I think the main, I think what really drives down this and the reason why it seems like it's so complicated for the city is because of the structure of our ordinance and our drought plan. We tie all of our water sources together into the stages. So the reason why Headwaters didn't address anything else besides groundwater is because they don't have the authority to do that. I mean, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but they don't. So they simply addressed our groundwater issue. The reason why it's an issue for us now is our ordinance is just set up that if we're required to go to stage 4, or we have to go to stage 4 for any reason, it affects not only our groundwater, but everything else. So I think a solution is we need to revise our plan so that if we have to follow what Headwaters is going to do and move over to a stage, they affect and they have authority over our groundwater. We need to find some way where we can still utilize our other sources if possible. But we also have to be careful because even with that, someone gave me an analogy the other day when I sat down with them and talked about this over at Headwaters, is that it's like having 2 bank accounts. We have the groundwater in one account and all of our other sources in another. And you deplete the resource in one, you're going to have to eventually rely on the other. So they all go and they're all combined in a way. So we just have to keep that in mind. I also think another reason why we need to look at our plan is because last month we removed the new Ellenberger well, the Loop 534 well, to change our safe operating capacity, and that's what got us to stage 2. I think the fact that we were able to do that just like overnight indicates that the data and the calculation that we're using can be easily manufactured or manipulated, whatever word you want to use, to achieve what we want. And so now we're at stage 2, but assuming if the city wanted to put the Ellenberger well back on, that changes our safe operating capacity, then we go back down to stage 1, drought conditions. So clearly, I don't think the calculation really adds up to what the true situation of our drought is. And I think we need to find some way where whatever stage we're going to be on actually reflects the situation that we're in. So I appreciate that. I submitted to council, would be happy to participate in any discussions from the city with Headwaters if we need to do anything like that and figure out what are their minimum requirements, how are we going to follow that, and then what are we going to do to make sure we're compliant and that we just be a good steward for not only our own citizens, because I think we're doing everything correct for our citizens, but also for the surrounding communities around us, because we don't just affect Kerrville. We affect all of Kerr County, and all of Kerr County affects surrounding areas. So we just need to keep that in mind. Thank you. And I support going into this stage.
Roman, I'm not sure I understood everything you said, but if I understood it correctly, the city's not doing any manipulation when it comes to all the figures and the information that they have to keep. So, you know, it's a very, very complex situation, and but I think we need to be very careful that we're not saying that we can manipulate those to do what we want it to do. It has a way. The figures are there, and the figures are then match up what our stages are.
I think it just begs the question then, if we were able to remove it and now we're at stage 2, if we put it back in the well, we're at stage 1. So that demonstrates we can change it pretty easily.
Well, but changing and manipulating and some of those things.
Manipulate, manufacture, whatever word you want to use, they're analogies for each other. So you don't need to take it literally as if I think city staff is going in and changing a whole bunch of stuff. No, they presented it in a very transparent way. We know what they were doing, but we were still able to do it, and I'm not putting the blame on them because city council ultimately has responsibility for how we're operating these things. So we allowed one well to be removed in order to go to a higher stage. But again, seeing if we told staff, instructed them to somehow put it back in, we're back at stage 1. So that just shows that it can be easily changed.
I'm not sure about that, so.
So the reason that we changed that well, or took it out of our safe operating capacity, wasn't intentionally to manipulate the safe operating capacity. It was because it was influencing another well, and we didn't want that redundancy captured in our safe operating capacity because we didn't feel it was a reliable way of tracking that. So it wasn't a manipulation or a change. We changed it by taking it out. So, you know, semantics is that. But the intention of it was that we felt that well was not reliable 100% of the time. And that's why we did that.
There's that too, absolutely. Yeah, and I'm glad we're finally indicating that it's not 100% reliable.
I just want to say thank you to you and your crew for operating our system so efficiently. I've learned a lot about water from you, and I appreciate it. And we'll get through this. And I'm looking forward to staff and perhaps some members of council working alongside you with the Headwaters Underground Water District, because we're all trying to do the same thing. We're all trying to protect
Agree.
those trees dying downstream and the trees dying upstream.
There's gonna be a lot of them dying. Brenda, anything you'd like to add? Okay, thanks. Jeff?
Reiterate what Councilmember Herring just said to you and your staff. Phenomenal. I do have a question about, you turn your letter in to Ms. Meismer tomorrow at 8 o'clock in the morning. I'm just gonna say for a round number. So at 11:59 tomorrow evening or 12:01 Thursday morning is when stage 4 would go into effect, in essence.
Yes, sir. So that letter will trigger us to do a few different things. It's public notices and the way that we disseminate that and get that out. But yes, the 12:01, after all the notices criteria have been met, which that letter will be the impetus to start all that. And I'm pretty confident we'll be able to get it all done tomorrow. And then the stage 4 would start at 12:01 Thursday morning. Yes, sir.
Just wanted to make sure so everybody in Kerrville would know.
That's correct.
Where we're
Yes,
at, so the citizens are informed properly.
And Stuart, I want to say thank you to you and your team. You guys have put in time, effort, and you've lost a lot of sleep over this, I know. And I appreciate it so very, very much. I also think all of council would like to say thank you to our community. They have, when they've been asked to conserve, they've done that. And that's huge. And we see it in the figures. We know that it's been happening. And I think we need to reiterate, we're doing this to be a good neighbor to the county. And this isn't because we had to or were told to. We're doing it because we feel it's the right thing to do. So I just thank all of you, but also to our community. And I know we're going to have to ask the community to continue conservation. And this won't be fun for everybody, but overall it will be good for everybody. So thank you, thank you. And I think we have council support with the recommendation that you're giving to Kim.
Very good, thank you. And thank you for the acknowledgement for the guys. They're the ones doing the work. I mean, they're the ones out there worrying about the wells. Are they coming on? And what kind of noise is it making? Is that a piece of gravel, or is it, we're watching very closely, and my hat's off to them day and night for keeping our
Well,
waters
and I
flowing.
think that's something people don't realize, that our water system is monitored day and night by, not by a computer or something. It's monitored by people.
Yes,
It's
ma'am.
monitored by people. So we appreciate that.
Well, thank you. I will pass it
Stuart.
along.
One of your recommendations was that we meet with Headwaters. How do you want to set that up? What does council
we'll-
want to do with that?
We'll reach out to them, if that's okay, and we'll try to find some time that y'all can meet. If you want to put a group together, maybe, we'll find out if
We'll
they have
work
one
that
or
out.
two staff members,
We'll
or
work it out.
council and a staff member, maybe we can all get together, who all wants to be in the room, so. If that's all right with you, Mr. Jones.
Just give us a call.
Very good, thank you, sir. Don't mean to put you on the spot right there, but thank you. I'm glad that you're here, so thank you for coming to the meeting.
Did we have more speakers?
When,
Oh, we did have two. I'm sorry. Thank you, Jeff. All right, do our speakers want to speak?
Jerry Wolf.
I apologize, I forgot, so.
There's been a lot of talking up here tonight.
That's good.
First of all, let me start off with something very negative, and I hate to have to say this, but it needs to be said. I think this whole process of how the city council has worked with Headwaters is a black eye on the city council. It was 2 weeks ago that Headwaters announced they were revoking the exemption that the city had. Why did it take 2 weeks to address this? There's no reason not to.
Mr. Wolf, I'm going to interrupt you. This has been a complicated thing for the city to work through. It wasn't ignoring anybody, and we have been in touch with Mr. Jones. There have been conversations. We haven't ignored this. Our staff went to work immediately with this. So I think that your accusation that it's a black eye on city council, I have to take objection to. We have
Okay.
been working the process, working through this, and we told Mr. Jones from the very beginning, it needs to go to council. We've had to work through it. We've done that.
Yes, ma'am, I understand your thoughts.
Can he regain his minute of time that was just lost by your statement? Just interrupted him and
I did interrupt him, and if he needs another minute of time, he can have it. But I would like no more black eye on the council, Mr. Wolf.
You have the right
Okay,
to say
it's
whatever
my-
you have
it's
the right
my-
to say whatever you want, though.
All
It's your
well,
right.
It's my observation.
Sure.
And I think this just keeps delaying this and delaying this and delaying this. From a person who read it several times, it's very clear what was stated. The city's exemption from the drought status, drought contingency plan was revoked. Very simple, very straightforward. Something that you may or may not have heard is that the aquifer, this measurement of the current level that Mr. Barron quoted earlier, that is currently at 1,380 feet. It may be a little bit below that. That is an all-time low. Last summer, at the same time, the aquifer was at 1,397. So it's dropped 17 feet from its lowest point ever. This is this is uncharted territory. And so there's a very high, obviously, this is why Headwaters has a very great concern about the aquifer. Things are dire in the county. And I think Kerrville, to be a good neighbor to the people in the county, needs to be concerned about their plight. The ranchers in West Kerr have pleaded for now water to be transported to them. In fact, the county's emergency management office has put out a notice asking for water trucks so they can ship water out there to those people. And of course, we know the situation in East Kerr and further a little bit south toward Center Point, how many wells are going dry. If you talk to the Headwaters people, daily they're getting phone calls of wells going dry. So this is a very, very serious situation. I also wonder how much water, I know there's a combination of factors that goes on about Nimitz Lake. Been checking for the last several weeks. We got a current
Add 1 minute.
Okay.
we have a current inflow of 5 cubic feet per second, which is about 1.9 million gallons a day, coming into Nimitz Lake, and just a very trickle coming out. So that difference of 4 million, you still need 2 million more, so I presume it's either coming from the lake or from the aquifer. Probably not too much from the aquifer that means you're pulling it from the lake. How much time does Nimitz Lake have? You said it has 60 to 90 days, but how much more water has to be pulled from somewhere else? Is that completely 4 million gallons a day from Nimitz? Or 2 million gallons a day and 2 million from somewhere else? Mrs. Eichner?
I'm sorry, sir. I'm sorry. I don't have an answer for you.
Could you ask Mr. Barron?
If you would just finish your presentation, and we'll
Yes,
try
ma'am,
to
I'm
get
trying
back
to
to,
get
we'll get back to you
information so
later
that-
with an answer.
Okay, well, I'm trying to get information for the people of
Time's
Kerrville
up.
so we can understand the
I'm
water
sorry.
situation.
Your
here.
time is up, Mr. Wolf.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Barbara Duell Ferguson.
Barbara Ferguson, I live here in Kerrville. I thank Stuart for the recommendation today to send that letter, and the fact that the citizens of Kerrville by Thursday morning hopefully will be notified that they're in stage 4. I regret that it's taken 2 weeks for that to happen, and I have to take exception with the mayor's comments that they were not asked to do this, they did not have to do it. That the city is obligated under state statutes to abide by the drought rulings of the Headwaters Groundwaters Conservation District. I am glad that that is now going to happen. I would like to encourage all the citizens of Kerrville to abide by these restrictions, and as the mayor did state, I think they will. And I think we will see further reductions, which will help our situation. I do think that we need to look hard at the policy of using standard operating capacity as a way to judge where we are in our ability to pull water out. Because you're approved the capacity by Headwaters, Groundwaters, by the TCEQ, that doesn't say that that capacity is always there. And right now we're seeing that. The capacity isn't there in the Trinity. Those 888 million gallons that we put in with ASR wells probably helped delay reaching this point, which was a good thing. But that does not mean that we could start pumping today and pump out those 888 million gallons and not hurt anybody. That aquifer that is stored in is at extreme drought levels. So I think it's important to the citizens of Kerrville to understand we do not have a lockbox storage tank underground where we're putting this water and it will always be there to pump out. That isn't how it works. And as the mayor said, it is complicated, but it's important to find a way to get basic information out to our citizens so they understand and they will do their very best in their conservation efforts. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's the end of the citizen speakers.
All right, I believe we are ready to move to 7D. And council, if you are in agreement, I would like to move it to after 8A and let Julie do her presentation now.
Sure.
Does anyone have any objections? Thank you. Julie, you're up.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I will be brief. So I just want to give you a quick update of where we are financially as of the end of July. On the general fund side, about $920,000 better than where we estimated we would be on revenues. Property tax is fully collected, but keep in mind that number does include current and prior year collections in that number. Sales tax running a little bit behind where we estimated, and we keep talking about sales tax, and we're continuing to watch that. Just keep in mind, we do have until mid-November before we can get a solid number on sales tax. So we're tracking that. We don't expect to make budget on sales tax. We're hoping to get close. However, we do have some other revenues that we feel like are going to offset that, so we feel like we're okay on the revenue side. Recreation is coming in line with budget, so that's nice to see. We started off the year a little bit slow, but it's looking good on that front now as well. Expenses, about $1 million better than budget estimate, but it's a little bit too early to be making those recommendations. A lot of our maintenance expense is just coming online. We have a heavy paving season right now, which is where a lot of our maintenance costs are. And we have seen a lot of heavy training, which is part of our personnel budget in the last few months. So we're watching those things closely, but overall, general fund looks pretty good. This is just the chart that I've been showing you on sales tax, just so you can kind of see the trends. I mean, the trend lines are the same, and we talk about that all the time. Just a little bit of variation in either increase or decrease depending on the month. And there's some variables, of course, each month that are some factors. So we're really looking at that rolling average, and right now about 5.7% over the last 12 months. This time last year we were over 12%, but again, a lot of still dealing with influx of cash and things like that coming from COVID. So it is volatile, but our growth has been steady, and looking over the last 4 years, you know, we still feel like sales tax is healthy, and being conservative in the 24 budget, I still feel like we're pretty good there. Water fund, water and sewer, I'm happy to report still, I mean, our water model is working. Our revenues are lining up just really where we thought we would be, estimated at this point in time. We'll continue to watch those, especially as we continue into the drought stage, and see what that looks like for us from an irrigation standpoint. So we'll report back on that, of course, next month. Interest in miscellaneous, definitely higher than we're used to seeing there, but again, we don't rely on that really as a big revenue source in either fund. That's just specifically related to what we're seeing in investment rates right now. Personnel lining up almost identical in the water fund with where we estimated it to be, and really overall revenues and expenses really in line with where we thought we would be at this time of the year. Quick update on development services, and again, for financial reporting, this is part of the general fund. We break it out here just so you can kind of see what's going on from a development standpoint, and then just for transparency as far as how they're spending money related to economic development, those kind of things. $80,000 overall change in net position to the positive, which is better than we were this year, where we were actually $100,000 short. So you just can't really tell from one year to the next in this fund, which we have that transfer that you know that kind of is a gap fill from general fund to development services only on the budget side, just to balance their budget. So some big projects coming online as we've continued to talk about. Peterson Surgery Center, which we did do a payout today on the first half of the EIC Peterson contract. So that was good news. So they're making some progress over there on their infrastructure. Hot fund, still running behind last year. So the last 8 months have actually been behind last year. We'll remind you that, of course, 21 and 22 were super heavy hotel occupancy tax years. A lot of reasons for that, you know, people shifting during COVID specifically and what their travel plans were and those kind of things. So we're just monitoring that. We're still ahead of what a normal year would be, but we are expected to be behind budget a little bit, probably by about $250,000. But again, our interest revenue is going to offset some of that. So we're watching that pretty closely. Eclipse merchandise and sponsorships, we're about $23,000 right now in the last few months since Parks has been selling some items related to the eclipse. So that's going to all be restricted at year end so that we can make sure that's set aside specifically for those purposes as we move forward. So, of course, promising to be brief, just a little bit of update as far as where we are with the calendar. We will actually have our first audit pre-work meeting this week, so I'm super excited to file a budget. Haven't passed it yet, and we're working on audit. We'll be bringing to you the first reading and the public hearing for both the budget and the tax rate on the 12th of September, and then the final reading on the 26th. And so we'll end our fiscal year on the 30th and start a brand new year on October 1st. So happy to answer any questions you might have on this or anything else.
Have you seen any, or no, have you seen, do we have any major changes from the proposed budget that you've given us?
We do not.
Okay, that's all I need to know going into next month.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Nope, we do not. And if you have questions, we still have a couple weeks. Happy to answer those beforehand so we can get that cleared up.
Thank you, Julie.
course.
Appreciate it.
Julie.
Yes, ma'am. Good night.
All right, we will do 7A and 7-9 together. And I'm sure we want to go into executive session for this.
Sorry, which
Item-
two were we doing together?
Well, 7A, and we skipped over that.
No,
but
we
it-
didn't.
It's
We're-
7, it's okay, 7.
7B?
D as in David.
Oh, 7D. Okay, I apologize.
No worries.
7D. Okay, thank you. So we will move, combine that with 9A, essentially, and I am assuming we want to go into executive session. Do we have a motion?
Yes, I move that we go into executive session under Articles 551.071 and 551.074.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, right hand. Thank you very much. We will recess at 8:33 upstairs.
Need to
At 8:52, we will convene with the regular city council meeting, and we do have have information from our executive session. Do we have a motion?
Yes, I move that we approve the agreement, the city manager agreement with Robert Dalton Rice to be city manager of the city of Kerrville.
Second. Second.
Thank you, Brenda. All in favor, raise your right hand. And it is unanimous. And I think Mr. Dalton, or Mr. Rice, you are watching, so congratulations and thank you. All right, as we wind up here, does anyone have anything for a future agenda?
Do I still have my update of animal ordinances on the future agenda?
Yes.
Okay.
I think Mike is almost ready with that.
Oh, okay. All right, I
on
was
a
just
date.
checking.
Okay, I would like to put one thing on that agenda. Schreiner University has approached me and asked if we would consider being a sister city for a little village in France. It was the childhood home of Captain Charles Schreiner. And will you say it louder?
Reekveer.
You can say it. I practiced all day, but mine doesn't come out like yours does. They would like to look into this. That's what they are doing right now, and would like for us to consider that. We're not quite sure what all that entails, and but they took a group last summer to France, visited the town, and they had a great time, and they think that this would be fun, and I think it would be fun too. So
It's the 100th anniversary of the.
it is the 100th
University.
anniversary.
Of the university.
Yes, of the university. Yeah. So
Second.
do I have a second? Thank
Second.
you. Thank you. Anyone else?
I'm confused. I don't know what does that mean?
Well, we're not quite sure. Exactly. what
Does it include a trip?
It may be a trip, maybe a trip, that's right.
Fact-finding
So,
tour.
they're going to work out details, and, I mean, it won't cost us anything, it's just, a sister city, there'll be a proclamation and that kind of thing. So,
Well, you could be
yeah.
thinking about this. Mayor Gene Smith led a delegation to the Mexican city that we're sister cities with, and I can't remember. It's in the Chihuahua, and I can't remember
Okay.
the name of
Did
it.
you bring him back, or?
Pardon?
He went, did he come back?
Yeah, he came back with tequila, and they sent a delegation. There you go. And-
Oh, and if when you go online and you Google it, it is.
It's very pretty.
Just a quaint, beautiful little town, and it's walled, so the only cars that can get in are little bitty cars. So, you walk everywhere, and, so you can look it up, and, no, he was, Captain Schreiner was born there.
Queuwir.
I'm impressed.
I was ready to go back to Chihuahua.
Also, you can buy wine from there at HEB, if you want to get
Oh,
a
okay.
flavor for the community.
You have, R-I-Q-U-E-W-I-H-I, yeah. Okay. All right. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is 8:56 and this meeting is adjourned.
Yay.